Have you ever heard of a pope who shared a name with an ancient Roman god? It sounds almost impossible, right? But picture the city of Rome in the year 533. The streets are bustling, rumors are swirling, and everyone's on edge, eager to find out who will step into the role of the next pope. Suddenly, word spreads that the chosen man is called Mercury. Yes, the same name as the Roman messenger god. You can imagine how that might send shockwaves through a Christian community that's only recently put distance between itself and pagan traditions. But this unexpected name isn't just gossip. It's a spark that will change the course of history and shape the way we think about the papacy for the next 1,500 years. It's January 2nd, 533. Rome is a shadow of its former imperial glory. The Western Roman Empire is gone, and various kings and armies have fought over the remnants. The Eastern Roman Empire still claims influence, but the city itself is worn down by invasions and power struggles. People are longing for stability, and the church stands as one of the few pillars offering hope. When the name Mercury is announced, the confusion is immediate. A man named for a pagan deity taking the highest seat in the Christian world? It's a puzzle that's both intriguing and unsettling. For centuries, popes usually kept their birth names when they rose to the papal throne. But Mercury's situation was different from anything the church had faced before. After all, it wasn't just an unusual name, it was a direct reference to a god worshipped by the very empire that had once persecuted Christians. Imagine how the faithful felt. On one hand, they trusted this man's character and devotion. On the other, they worried that his name might send the wrong message, especially at a time when old pagan practices weren't entirely gone, and Christianity was still asserting itself as a true faith. Mercury, who grew up in a Christian household despite his pagan-sounding name, must have felt that tension keenly. In the early Christian world, names weren't just labels. They carried power, identity, and spiritual meaning. And here he was, about to become the face of the church, while his name reminded everyone of Rome's ancient gods. People whispered that an outsider might see this as a sign of compromise, like the church was mixing the old pagan ways with the new faith. That was a risk no one was willing to take. So, he made a choice unlike any before him. He decided to cast off his birth name, Mercury, and take on a new one that matched his calling. He became John II. It was more than just a personal decision. It was a statement that faith and devotion outweighed any lingering echoes of the old pagan world. And once he made that bold move, he set a precedent that still stands. No pope has kept a name that seems out of step with Christian tradition since that day. To really appreciate what John II did, it helps to know a bit more about the world he lived in. At the time, the Eastern Roman Emperor was Justinian I, famous for his ambition to restore the Roman Empire to its former reach. He was also deeply involved in church affairs, pushing for unity under Orthodox Christian belief. Meanwhile, the Ostrogoths and other barbarian groups held parts of Italy, and the religious landscape was divided by heated debates over doctrines that tested the unity of believers. John II stepped right into the middle of these conflicts. He was expected to be a guide, a mediator, and a protector of the faith, even as he tackled the fallout of cultural and political shifts. Of course, not everyone cheered this name change. Some elites in Rome complained it might break the tradition that linked each pope directly back to St. Peter. Others thought it was a clever political strategy to distance the church from any pagan hints, making sure no one questioned the purity of its leadership. But if there was any grumbling, it wasn't loud enough to overshadow the ripple effect of his decision. It quickly became normal for a newly elected pope to choose a name that captured his values, vision, or the legacy he wished to uphold. In the centuries that followed, almost all the popes you've heard of, Leo, Gregory, Urban, Innocent, Benedict, Pius, adopted new names. It became such a standard part of the papal tradition that today we barely remember it wasn't always this way. But every time a pope appears on the balcony of St. Peter's and announces a name like Francis or John Paul, it's a quiet echo of that chilly day in 533 when Mercury decided he couldn't lead Christ's church, bearing the title of an old Roman deity. This story makes you wonder, what if he hadn't changed his name? Would people have accepted Pope Mercury then? Maybe, but the church might have found itself caught in an unnecessary controversy about mixing pagan identity with Christian leadership. Or what if later popes hadn't followed his lead? It's possible they would have kept their birth names, which might have altered how we remember them. When you think about it, the name a leader takes can tell you so much about how they see themselves and what they stand for, especially in a role that symbolizes faith for millions. John II, short time as Pope, he died in 535, wasn't just marked by this name switch. During his tenure, he also worked to settle disputes over different teachings about Christ's nature, especially the ones that challenged the official stance of the Church. He collaborated with Emperor Justinian, who was trying to keep the empire religiously unified. Though some of these battles feel distant to us today, they mattered intensely back then because each belief people adopted had political and social consequences. The Pope was often the anchor people looked to for clarity. That's why an unambiguous statement like, "I am no longer Mercury, I am John," held so much weight. Even outside the Church, Rome itself was going through a massive identity shift. Old pagan temples were being repurposed or abandoned, and new churches sprouted to accommodate a growing Christian population. The city was getting used to a future without the old gods, so a pope named Mercury would have been a strange throwback to an era that many people were relieved to leave behind. By taking on the name John, he helped usher Rome into a new phase where the lines between paganism and Christianity were more clearly drawn. You might be asking, why should we care about this now? Because names still carry meaning. Look at the modern world. Celebrities change their names, politicians sometimes tweak theirs to be more appealing, and spiritual leaders everywhere choose names that reflect their beliefs. When a person in a position of major influence switches names, it's never a small gesture. It's an announcement of who they want to be seen as. And in the case of a pope, that shift affects not just one religious community but can influence culture, politics, and even everyday life for countless people around the globe. So think of John II's choice as a kind of blueprint. It shows us that traditions can begin with a single surprising decision. Rome was once the heart of pagan worship, then it became the center of Catholicism. And out of that tension came a man who broke from his own birth name to ensure the faith moved forward without confusion. Fast forward to the modern day, and we can still feel the effects of that change each time a new pope picks a name that sets the tone for his leadership. That's the real power in this story. It reminds us how a small but deliberate act can resonate across centuries. A single name swap might seem like a minor detail, but in the grand tapestry of Christian history, it signaled the triumph of a new tradition over an old identity. And it gave future popes a chance to shape how they'd be remembered from the very first moment they took the throne. As we wrap up, consider that what happened on January 2nd, 533 wasn't just a curious footnote. It was the start of something far bigger, something that continues to influence how the papacy presents itself to the world. Next time you hear about a new pope announcing his chosen name, think back to Mercury becoming John II. That small decision echoes every time the faithful hold their breath, waiting to hear the new papal name that will guide them through the challenges and hopes of their time. Now, I invite you to continue this journey of discovery. Check out the links in the description and the first pinned comment for deeper insights into the dramatic transformations of the early medieval church and to browse recommended books that bring these eras to life. By subscribing, liking this video, and joining the conversation in the comments, you help preserve these pivotal moments in history, moments that shape not just one city, but the very course of human civilization.